So, David, welcome to the Choices webinar.
Thank you.
It's great to have you.
And good to be here. Thanks. Hi, Jason.
Hi. So we're going to be talking about Chemsex and how things are going with the COVID situation and how we are taking care of each other and anything you'd like.
Oh, great. So we've been talking to each other because you're one of the directors of the Choices app, right?
Yeah.
Which is one of the. Could you tell us first about what Choices do in Amsterdam?
Right. So Choices Support Center is a fairly new organization. We are basically trying to help people sort out issues around their drug use and risk behaviors associated with the drug use. Really to help people figure out what they want to do with their drug use. We know that it's difficult for people who want to stop using drugs. Many people who go into a treatment program usually don't stay long, or when they get there, they find out it's not really what they expected. So for people who do want to go into treatment or think about treatment, it's good that they become better prepared for this, like treatment readiness, and also to have an opportunity for people in the community to feel safe to talk about drugs and sex in a non-stigmatizing way. And I think now, it's really important because there's a gap in care, and people will say, well, there's really a gap in care in the Netherlands. There's service for everyone, but people really don't feel comfortable going to a lot of traditional treatment programs or harm reduction programs. So if you really want to make a change in life, it's good to go somewhere to really talk about that without making a commitment to a rehab center or having insurance pay for it, things like that.
Yeah, when I first saw the website for Choices, it's really impressive because it's very holistic. It's very patient-centered, and even the name Choices. Whenever I'm doing trainings around what like drug use support is, it all comes down to the choice of the person sitting in front of you, the choice of the person who might be using drugs.
Exactly.
And what goals they want to pursue and how they want to pursue them. So choice is a word that's usually the first word on my slides. So I fell in love with Choices from the start because it's the perfect word in a stigmatized world.
Yeah, and I think that's really what it's all about. It's about helping people decide what's best for them from a very humanistic approach, and having them make a personal care plan. So it's not like a treatment plan, it's a care plan. How, very holistically, how are we going to take care of you? How do you define your own recovery or your own wellness, right? It's not what a treatment program is going to say. It's not AA or NA or this or that. It's what works best for you. And we are here to help people figure that out.
It goes right to the core of what behavioral support is when it comes to drug use or addiction or whatever you want to call it. It's still a very new field, and I think most of the drug services that we're familiar with, it's still relatively poorly understood. I think the average person in the street doesn't really know why people would do a thing if it has such difficult consequences. Why do they keep doing it when it has those consequences? Just that behavioral thing is so poorly understood. And I think a lot of the drug support services were born in the opiate, heroin, crack cocaine, street alcoholism kind of climate. And that's where all drug support exists, in stigma, in real life, in geography, and in buildings, and in the bricks and the mortar. And I think we're in these modern times, we're learning that drug use and addiction and the choices we make around drugs and alcohol are way more complicated than that. And you can't just expect a heroin addiction model to fix everything. We need much more culturally tailored programs, as you were saying. Exactly.
And I think that the needs of drug users are very diverse. And a lot of these programs are really, except for like Liverpool and the Merseyside program, one of the first harm reduction programs in the Netherlands, first harm reduction services, really come from that public health approach, rather than other countries like where I come from, it's criminalized, and you have no rights, and everything is taken away from you. So I think what we're doing is rather new, and it's always evolving. Particularly now, I think with the whole chemsex thing, right?
Yep.
I've read recently that people in the UK, they're trying to come up with these crazy laws now around that. Have you read that in the Guardian about a few weeks ago about the laws they want to change?
Where? Here in London?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I did, and it's just not coming to mind right now.
It's okay. But they wanted to change, they wanted to really make things more harsh.
Oh, yes, I know, particularly around GHB and GBL.
Yes. Yeah. Because these guys who premeditatedly drugged and raped people.
Yeah. So that's interesting because we have a class system, which is really about the legal system. So
yeah,
people misunderstand it. So you've got class A drugs and class B drugs and class C drugs, and the general person on the street just gets an idea of how dangerous is a drug based on what class it is. But class has got nothing to do with danger at all. It's got purely got to do with how it helps judges and legal systems decide what the criminal response should be. And GHB has always been class C, even though it's one of the most dangerous drugs on the planet. It's killing more gay men at the moment than AIDS is, and it's there are literally hundreds of overdoses, not fatal ones, happening every week in London that are potentially fatal, but not. So it's a very dangerous drug, but it's only class C. And I don't really care what class it is because it's got nothing to do with danger levels. You know, it's that I don't understand. But I did see those reports, yeah. And unfortunately, in the media, they always, whenever you hear G, they always leap back to these very non-chemsex related stories of mental health people using G, or like criminally mental health people using G in very, very unusual circumstances, and then they just stick the chemsex label on that, stick it on the front of a newspaper, and everyone goes, oh my god, chemsex, we must do something. Yeah, that was fairly annoying actually last week. Yeah, so that's why I forgot about it, obviously, you know, mentally.
Yeah, it's quite all right. But do you think this whole COVID situation is impacting the way people are reacting to things?
Yeah, well, in a huge way, it's changed the way I work, and nearly every person I speak to around the world, whether it's someone who's supporting people in chemsex or whether it's people engaging in chemsex, it's changed everybody's relationship to chems and chemsex.
Okay.
Really, because in the very first part, when the governments around the world were saying, stop hooking up, stop having sex and doing drugs. So they weren't actually saying that, but essentially they were. We weren't allowed to socialize anymore, which meant that if you went onto Grindr and you wanted to hook up and have sex with someone and do drugs, that was actually kind of against the law, certainly against public health policy. And there were I tell you what, there are a lot of gay men around the world who are like, you know, we've had decades, actually centuries of governments telling us that our sex is illegal or disgusting, or illegal or disgusting, and now they're going to do it again, you know, And it was, I have to say, it was not fun. It was never fun to watch this, but it was really interesting to watch the global gay men's response to, oh, are we back there? Oh no. And I did enjoy doing that, but it wasn't, the initial reaction that I saw was people going, recognizing that chemsex was more of a recreation than the typical kind of addictive, dangerous drug use and mental health that that is associated with like heroin and crack cocaine and typical drug use services. Right. We realized that, chemsex is recreational. People can stop when it's important. And many can, but you know, we know drugs use, it's more complicated than that. But what I saw is a whole lot of people who would normally say, I need help, David. I need help, David. I need help, David here. And then when the government said, oh, everyone's in danger, we need to stop doing this, they go, oh, okay, I can. Oh, I don't have a problem. I can stop doing it if I have this kind of important motivation. If something urgent and global is happening, if my behavior impacts on someone else's mental health, like coronavirus or passing it on or epidemic, oh, I do have the skills, the ability to commit to not doing it and be able to stick to that. I have that. Wow, that surprises me. That was the first thing I saw.
Yeah. And do you think that there's been a subgroup of people who have been overindulgent because they've been at home more often?
That's the second thing I saw. So yeah, the second thing I saw was a whole lot of people who had said, I don't have a problem with chems, or my problem with chems is just that I'm doing a little more frequently than I want to. It's
Yeah.
not a crazy mental health addiction, loose control. It's just I need some help in setting some boundaries. But what I did see, the second kind of thing was that group of people, a whole lot of people suddenly self-medicating, like not overnight, but
Yeah.
yeah, in a way overnight, but it took a couple of weeks for the usual way of I'm bored, it's Saturday night, I might find my grinder and hook up and go and have sex with some people, and it may or may not get out of hand. Slowly to 3 weeks or 4 weeks into the epidemic, it was lone masturbation at home on chems, and that turning into a kind of a self-medicating thing until it's so easy for that to turn into I'm not at work. I haven't been at work for 3 weeks. I might just do a shot of G and have a wank, and that turns into I'll get a little more Tina around, and that'll turn suddenly you're doing a 2-day home wank session, which they hadn't planned to do, and that can then turn into doing a little bit of Tina every single day, just because that's how it works sometimes.
Exactly. Yeah. And so what I've heard from some guys, and we've been talking about this the other day, is some people are having difficulties with the boundaries because if you're working from home, it's very difficult to separate your work week from the weekend.
Yeah.
Right. So it kind of the lines are getting blurred because you get out of bed, you can eat, and then you sit down, you can go to work, and then you're not really leaving the house to go into work. So have you noticed that difficult for some people?
Yeah. Well, one thing that I think when if we're talking about the group of people in the world, and I like to call them a group because we're all connected in a way, but the sort of person where drug use is related to some self-medicating or to mental health, when that is the case, one thing that nearly every, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I sort of am, forgive me everybody, but that thing, an addict, a person who has mental health, one of the worst things for mental health is being alone.
Yeah.
And one of the greatest solutions for most mental health and addiction is good connections to other people. And of course, in the middle of a pandemic, when you can't connect to other people, except in this, on this screen in front of you, which just doesn't feel the same. And as a hug or as a really kind compliment from someone after you've had a very organic private conversation with them, it just feels very different like this. So when there's a whole lot of people who being alone with your thoughts, without distraction. When I say distraction, I mean without television, without your phone, without a drink, without a drug, without people, without a dance floor, without music, just being alone with your thoughts.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people in the world find really easy. I'm not one of them, but there's a whole lot of people in the world that just do that really easily. They're at peace. They're at peace with the thoughts that float through their head. They're usually not harmful thoughts. They're usually I will accomplish that, or I can handle that, or I can access my history of being successful at that. But there's a whole lot of people in the world that when they're alone with their thoughts, the thoughts are, that went badly and it'll go badly again. What am I going to do with that? How will next week go? And that's so going to be badly. And if there's my reflection in the mirror, I look awful. And what's going to happen next week? And that'll probably go wrong. I might imagine that going wrong for a little while. When that is your constant dialogue, and that's true for a lot of people, when that's constant dialogue, you can't be alone. You do need distraction that helps shift that dialogue into a more positive, affirming space. So, when someone is like that and they're with you and you give them a compliment, it steers their thoughts in a more positive direction. That's just positive affirmations, and we thrive on them. We live on them, and people were starved of them during this pandemic, and the drugs were available and the affirmations weren't. And that's what I saw. I saw a whole lot of people who might never have thought they were self-medicators turn into self-medicators during this pandemic.
Yeah. And it can evolve into that very easily when you find yourself alone at home longer than you've expected. For example, I like to get dressed nicely
Right.
once in a while, right? Be a little fashionable. But working at home, sometimes there's no reason to, right? So that's why I like to go to the office at least 2, 3 times a week, so I can put something nice on and leave the house and feel good about myself. And that kind of helps me get out of my headspace, right?
Right. Me too.
Yeah. So there are things that we're trying to suggest to people on how they could put some boundaries in their life to try to have playtime and work time and me time, right? Because how you can chill out in a good way.
Yeah, well, I think what we did see, we saw it in the gay communities and in the queer communities, that done. Well, actually, they're the only ones I was looking at, to be honest. But there are lots of really brilliant things happened. I think we've kind of got used to them now. But in the first 3 or 4 weeks of global lockdowns, it was amazing to see arts turn into webinars and to see support sessions turn into it, to see groups and support groups and turn into online, and to see people like I now am an expert at Zoom, and I used to hate the thing. I sort of do hate it a little bit still, but I just watching clubs and dance and people do DJing and doing their DJ sets online, and everything adapted brilliantly, really, really fast. It's not enough, we really need human contact, but it was amazing to see that, because there was more than just, I mentioned the two kinds of things that I saw. I saw some people start to self-medicate. I also saw some people who thought they had a problem, realized they couldn't. But one way of reacting to that loneliness was just to defy the public health guidelines and just go out and party anyway. So then there was a whole lot of, warring within the gay community of, you shouldn't be hooking up and you should, and we've got the right to do it. And that argument that we use in substance use, like harm reduction versus abstinence, and even though that's a silly binary, it's a lot more complex than just these two binary opposing things. They're not opposing at all, but a lot of people were sort of putting that onto the gay sex thing, like, well, not just gay sex, all sex, should you hook up or should you not? We should be giving advice for people on how to avoid coronavirus if you're going to go out partying anyway. And you just can't.
No.
You cannot. If you leave the house, you are at risk. It doesn't matter. People are saying, well, what if you just do glory holes? Like, it doesn't matter. All of the journey from your house to the glory hole, all of the hands that touch the penis, that touch the wall, that touch the door handle, that touch the toilet flush, all these kinds of things are coronavirus. So you just can't do that. So it was just funny. Not wasn't funny. It was kind of funny in some way, watching the world adapt and try to adapt other models into a coronavirus model. And it's been an interesting year.
Yeah.
And of course, other things too. There was, we have to give harm reduction information in regard to drug use and safer sex anyway, which is at the core, of course, for Chemsex support. We have to do that anyway. It's an epidemic, because people will. And nearly all of my work during those strict lockdowns were with people who were defying those rules altogether. So part of my job, and I guess all other Chemsex advisors around the world, was trying really hard to deliver our public health messages, because that's what we do. If you're a good drugs worker, you help keep people safe and you deliver the public health messages, even if they're going to defy them. So literally trying to keep people safe and communities safe with the people who are actually defying it, and still consistently being able to help people through all of that without any judgment. That was the challenge for all of my drugs work colleagues around the world, some of whom have tuned in. Do you know there's a couple of people from Australia watching us right now at 5 o'clock in the morning? Hello,
Yeah.
guys.
Hello. Thank you for coming in.
Yeah.
So have you noticed any trends or new things happening in the community recently? Because there was a show recently here talking about how more and more younger guys are getting into chemsex.
Oh, that's interesting. Was it a good show? Was it stigmatizing or brilliant?
It was just a show about information about the growing number of younger people getting into chemsex, and from discussions I've had with a few people, they didn't really say why or how many, but what we think it could be basically to coping, coming out. Also, we also feel that maybe some older guys are turning younger guys on. But I don't know if you've noticed this in London.
Yeah, and globally, in fact. But there was interesting, because when I was first doing this work, probably 16 years ago, it was nearly older, white, gay, HIV positive men who were doing chemsex, almost like 90% of them. And we didn't see sort of young, it was almost exclusively that group. And here in Europe anyway. And it was really, we were trying to figure it out, but what we were thinking in those early days is it must have something to do with the ability to enjoy sex and pleasure as an HIV positive person. Is that part of what it is? And so, we were constantly evolving, constantly talking and changing and trying to sort of help people with wherever they're at. But yeah, what's happened, because it's a very sort of internet trend, I suppose, you don't find out about this because you saw a documentary. You don't find out about this because you watched you read an article in a paper. You find out of this because you log onto Grindr, because that's what other people are doing. And that's, there is a younger group of people who live on the internet. I mean, we all kind of do now.
Yeah.
But who learn from it. And when I say learn, I mean, we're talking about learning skills. If I'm going to, like, I don't know how old you are, Jason, but you look better than me, and we're about the same age, I like to think. We are, in our day, we would hook up with someone in a bar, usually in real life. The most electronic it got was those, what do you call them? Mail order bride sort of things, but mail order gay. When you would
rent a boy.
But yeah, you would usually find some dirty old man who was offering a free photographer service, and you'd find it in the back of the papers, of the gay papers, and that's how you would meet other people, because there were no bars or something.
Well, there were cruising bars. We'd go out cruising.
And there was cruising, yes, that's true.
Yeah.
And that was another way to meet, but that was probably the most instant form of it.
Right.
Again, even in those situations, there's some social skills that are required.
Yeah.
Like, even if I'm going to have sex with you, Jason, in 1983, we might have met in a bar.
Yeah.
Now, even if we're going to shag after 10 minutes, that 10 minutes is really crucial.
Yeah.
Because there's facial expressions.
Yeah.
And you're an American man, but you're living in Holland. We're not speaking Dutch, we're speaking English. But English isn't my first language. Australian is my first language, but that's not what I mean. The first language I learned was when I came out of my mother's womb, and I was frail. I needed protection. I was vulnerable to prey. I couldn't feed myself. I couldn't fend for myself. So I was incredibly vulnerable. And the very first language I learned, very first thing I learned, was facial expressions.
Yeah.
I knew from my mother's face whether I was safe or not, and whether I was unsafe. And my ability to read faces, and that's true of every human being and most mammals on the planet, and a lot of dogs, is profound. It's huge. And it plays an enormous part in some of the most vulnerable situations we're in. So in that 10 minutes, so we're having a drink together, I'm assessing that if I fart in bed, or if I'm a shitty bottom, or if I am whatever,
a shitty bottom.
I have to class it up, There's those facial expressions tell me, are you an okay person for this to happen with? Or are you a person who will do me harm, who will reject me, who'll be cruel, be kind, or worse? Are you a serial killer? I can assess all of these things from your facial expressions. And even at the most casual, like even in a cruising scenario, there's sort of signals and things we can use. But if it was a one-night stand, which is probably more common than hookup culture now, where you come and you go and you come and you go, we might have slept the night together. And when I woke up in the morning, I might have had a hangover, and I might not remember your name. And I would have to talk to you about, I don't remember your name. And maybe I never want to see you again, or maybe I do. Maybe you don't want to see me. Maybe I just want to leave, but I'm going to have the coffee with you because that's the polite thing to do. So there's a whole lot of social things. We might have a conflict about the Prime Minister of the day. or about this country versus that country, or that type of gay versus that type of gay. We might disagree, but we would resolve this conflict through communication skills and exchange phone numbers or not. And these social skills are crucial, and nearly all human beings learn them through the dating process or through those early teenage years. Talk about younger people, and younger gay men are learning this from the hookup experience, where there's no facial expressions. It's committing to sex based on having looked at their avatar and having typed some words to each other. And the hookup experience is not about one-night stands or those conflict resolution communication skills the following morning, or the bonding that happens over a drink. It's so instant. So we do have a lot of very young people who never learnt those skills the way you and I did, learning all of those skills from age 15 onwards from Grindr hookups. And in a lot of cases from chemsex scenarios where it can be, it sometimes is brilliant, but quite often it's not. The argument is that gay men don't learn this from their older brothers or older, like heterosexuals might, or hopefully from mum and dad, or sex and relationship education in school. They're all learning it from, they're supposed to learn it from the older gay brothers, most of whom died in the AIDS epidemic. So they're learning it from chemsex culture and hookup culture. And it's a really difficult place to learn. So these are the things that worry me. My activism is very much about having these conversations within our communities about well-being, about what sex can be and could be and should be and can be and might be next time, or how it can go wrong and how I can talk about that and how I can say this feels uncomfortable to me, or just because I'm here in your house with no clothes on doesn't mean you can have sex with me. That's not what consent means. All these kinds of conversations which young people aren't learning, a lot of old people didn't learn either. We need to have them.
That's so true, because like what you were talking about, I grew up on the streets of New York as a young boy, and your body language and your survival skills are very different than today. And so how looking at you and the vibe I get would make me feel safe or not safe, whether I would go home with you or not. Or we might just go to the toilet and have a thing, and that's the end of it, right?
Right.
But it's a lot different today when people find themselves in people's houses, fucked up, vulnerable, and trying to deal with the situation when it's a little too late. You're done, right? You're very vulnerable, more vulnerable than you can. So the issues around consent and coping mechanisms, I think, go hand in hand. Because if a lot of young people are getting into this situation as a coping skill, trying to cope with the situation to fit in or deal with the current situation, they find themselves in a situation that they might not be able to control.
Yeah, these are really complicated behavioral lessons that all human beings kind of need to learn. The thing that can happen in a chemsex environment is can be brilliant. There's a whole lot of really kind, brilliant people there that want to have those conversations in those environments, even if they're fucked up. People are capable of that. We're talking, but at the same time, some things become very normalized. So there are people who accidentally took too much G and really annoy everyone in the house, really annoy them because they're over there, passed out nearly, and playing with their own dick in an almost unconscious way. And rather than the attitude being that person's really high, we need to keep an eye on them, which is what we want people to be doing. It can be like, oh, again, every single time she does this. And they can move them out onto the curb and not keep an eye on them. And that person can wake up on the back doorstep of a place and wonder, this is normal. This has happened to me before. It's my fault. And no wonder I piss everyone off. And not really have an insight into why they do keep doing this, or have the harm reduction tools to avoid that happening themselves, but also deserving a kinder experience. There's also other scenarios where when someone's really high on meth and they've been awake for 2 days and they go over to a shake's house and all they do is they wank and change the porn and wank and change the porn and wank and change the porn. And rather than the other person in the room going, this person's been awake a really long time, kind of got that obsessive thing going on, not being a great guest and sort of ignoring me, and I do need to get rid of him, but I need to make sure they're okay, and can they get home okay, and try to engage them. And if they disengage from that porn, are they going to focus that obsession on something else unhealthy, and will they have a psychosis, and how can I help with that? We're fully aware that there's someone insanely vulnerable in their house with them, or do we just kick them out onto the curb? And there's a whole lot of kicking out onto the back doorstep, kicking out onto the curb that is going on.
Yeah.
And we see them in our support services, and a lot of these guys sometimes might get really high, and you might be really, really high. And when you come to, you realize someone's shagging you, and you don't remember how you got there. And you're wondering, did I invite this? Was I really high and I made this happen? Or are these people taking advantage of me? And I don't know how to talk about that. I don't know. I better not tell my friends. Or it might be the other way around. You might be having sex with someone and you see that they're rolling their eyes and they're really high and they're really enthusiastic, but they're really high. And you wonder, are you consenting? I'm having sex with someone who might be too high to consent. And what do you do about that? Is that something that you can talk to your friends about during the week because you felt confused about, or they just label you a racist? In fact, there are some sexual assault, domestic violence services, even LGBT ones, where they will just label you as a perpetrator of a rape rather than give you the space to talk about these complicated scenarios that are happening on a weekly basis. There's the brilliant Asian guy who we adore. He's campus tits, and we put him at the front of the Pride March, and we applaud him, and all of the mums and dads and families wave their pride flags and watch him go by. He's got his giant wings on and he minces down the street, and we love him. But on Grindr, he's really unwelcome. He gets called racist slurs. He gets feminine camp shaming all the time. There's a rejection. Not just 30 really cruel, racist, feminine rejections on one Saturday night, but when that happens every Saturday for a decade.
Why is this?
And yet we're still, because they might not think he's masculine enough, because people are racist, because there's in culture, because when we don't fancy someone, we don't know how to tell them kindly, you're not my type. We can usually just reject them. And we haven't learned how to do those social skills of how do you use Grindr and reject people kindly? How do you avoid backing onto slurs or I don't like you because your body doesn't suit me, bye, block. And that person sits with that. Why is it happening to me? Why do they put me on the front of the Pride March and love me in gay life, but in gay sex, I'm really unwelcome? And these are the conversations that are happening in chemsex support services and sexual health clinics all over the world, but not happening enough in our communities. And I think it's because people say, but I saw him on Saturday, he was fine, he was having fun. Yeah, it's true. They don't talk about it there because that's not the right space to talk about it. Are you meeting them, following them up afterwards and having conversations with them? Are you allowing those conversations to happen in your online support groups?
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, you know what this reminds me of? Back in the early of the HIV epidemic, when we were teaching people in harm reduction programs how to become a responsible drug user.
Right.
How to become what's a responsible drug user? If you're HIV positive, how do you protect yourself and protect other people with dignity, right? And for the community, right? So do you respect others in the community? Would you be willing to infect other people? So what's the sense of responsibility, personal responsibility for me as a drug user to my friends, my partner, and the community that my drug user community, right? And I think some of this is missing at the moment, right? So how do we teach people to become more responsible in their drug use? And what's appropriate?
We model it, for starters.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people think we can leave it to the therapist. If a person doesn't know those things, they should go see a therapist who will teach them boundaries, communication skills, conflict resolution. What do you want from sex? What do you not? How do you communicate online? How do you write a Grindr profile? As if some magical therapy service over there is going to fix all these people and give them those skills. When actually these are very much peer-led skills, that we all have a responsibility. So, I mean, it does start with, it's easy to be sober on Wednesday and say, yeah, I do take drugs, but when and I am kind to people when I'm high, but when you're really high, and it can limit our ability to empathize with other people sometimes.
Yeah.
We have to have these conversations, really. We have to have the conversations, not just when we're high, but also when we're sober. We have to model it. And I really think I mean, there are apps that have tried to incorporate a kind of social element into the way they function. I think that's a kind of important thing too. I just wish we didn't have to. Essentially, if we were taught in school that gay sex is awesome, the same way that straight sex is awesome, that if every time a religion dictated a gay sex is disgusting message disguised as something else, the whole world and governments and teachers and headmasters and friends and parents would say, don't listen to that. Gay sex is amazing. Not just being gay is amazing, gay sex is amazing. Because this is important, right? Because chemsex is not about medicating. Chemsex is about gay sex. There's not a whole lot of people that are struggling with coming out experiences like there were in the 80s. It's still difficult, I know, but it's very different now. And gay life is less of a problem than gay sex is. There's still, your mum and dad might think, it's okay that you're gay, it's okay. Just don't talk about the sex thing, you know, because that's disgusting. It's not like my daughter. I know my daughter has sex, but I don't want to think about what you do. This kind of subtle gay sex is disgusting thing, which is the source and the core of homophobia. Penises and bums, they happen the same way as penises and vaginas do. And if one of them makes you go, oh, like disgusting in a moral, religious, disgusting way, then that affects other people and they internalize that. And so chemsex is about gay sex. And so if every time that a person said, oh, I don't mind that you're gay, just keep that behind your closed doors, everyone else will go, no, yeah, sure, have sex in private, but I'm glad you're having sex. It's a good thing. Well done. Great. I hope it's awesome and fun and sexy. You know, those kinds of messages, because it's the lack of that that is causing problematic chemsex. That when gay sex is being medicated as opposed to just enhanced, you know, when we're medicating an inability to enjoy gay sex, then it's because of all those things that happen in culture in childhood. You know, I don't want my mum and dad to tell me it's okay to be gay. I want them to fucking shout and say, brilliant, I got a gay one. I want them to go and tell all the family, and I want them to raise a flag, and I want them to put streamers up, and I want them to shout, I got a gay one. I love gays. They're so amazing. They're sort of vibrant and happier and fun, and they have more fun, and they're prettier than everyone else. They have amazing sex lives, and I've got a gay. I'm so happy. I don't want my parents to go, it's okay that you're gay. No, it's way better than that. And I need the whole world to be celebrating my gayness and the fact that I have gay sex, and this gay sex is disgusting. Religions hate it. My homophobic uncle hates it. There's a lot of stuff on television that hate it too. And it's okay to be gay, but that gay sex stuff, just keep it very quiet because that's abominable. That's what I see a lot when I'm working with people who are medicating their gay sex with chemsex.
Yeah. Do you think it's what was the book again? Velvet Rage. Yeah. The internalizing stigma and shame. I think a lot of people are trying to associate the chemsex with that it's about, a lot of people feel that what they're doing, that they've been told for so long that they don't fit in, it's not good, you're not normal, that, you know, growing up in a straight world and this, that a lot of people are from the media and all the addiction professionals trying to say that chemsex is a coping mechanism for people who just don't deal with who they really are.
Do they? Yeah.
I don't know.
It's complicated. It's awful when that happens. I mean, a lot of the times we know chemsex is just having fun. Like, not everyone who has sex on alcohol in the world is medicating an inability to enjoy sex. Sometimes they're just having a drink and having a shag.
Right.
It's the same for chemsex too, but except that is also a very large number of people who really can't enjoy gay sex. It might be there's so much body shame in gay culture. There's so many gay men that really hate their bodies, act like they love it. They look amazing and they work hard to look amazing and they can Instagram themselves look amazing, but at their core, it's not quite there yet. And they're quite convinced that when they're in their bed with somebody, someone's going to say, there's someone better on Grindr than you. You know, we're done now. You know, that's going to happen. But it kind of does You know, it kind of does. And the inability, like, to be able to go to bed and say to someone, I know I acted like a god on Instagram and on Grindr, but I'm actually more vulnerable than that. And I get nervous taking my clothes off with a stranger. You know, I wish I didn't. I wish I was just a porn star hunk that can just come and do you and give this amazing experience. I'm not that guy. I know I pretended to be the guy. I'm sorry, but if I tell you when we kiss a lot, and I tell you that I actually don't like my body part, and this bit I don't like it, and I don't want you to go, oh, another one. Another girl, you know, I want someone who's sexy. There's someone better on Grindr than you who will deliver this performance. And there's so many gay men that feel that repeatedly, week after week, after year after year after year, and they become 30, 33, 37. And so many of their sexual experiences are with people who don't let them have that vulnerable moment in bed, or don't let them be less than heroic. And so there's a whole lot of people out there performing great gay sex. They've learnt it really well. You know, they know how to perform great sex, hide that vulnerability, please the other person, be hyper vigilant, watching facial expressions and body language to learn, am I pleasing this person or am I not? And that's the main thing going on in their brain when they're having sex. And they're really good at it. Brilliant. You know, they will have maybe hundreds of sexual experience where they deliver that successfully. They convince the other person and the whole world, even themselves, that was a great experience. But actually, it was just a great performance, that's all. And they're not really enjoying it. And they're looking for an experience they can enjoy in a climate and in an environment where it's really, really hard to find. So these are some of the other core in-community issues that we have to somehow address. Like, being vulnerable is the sexiest fucking thing that there is. And giving someone the space to be vulnerable is the sexiest thing you can do to someone.
That is the point, David. Giving people the space to feel vulnerable and safe is really important. Some things that we've been hearing about in the group, guys feeling afraid to be vulnerable, to have sex not on chems, for example, right? So it's like, you know, can I allow myself to take that chance to try to perform without this? Do I have to be this super macho porno guy and be the, you know, hard dick all night, you know, and yeah. So, I mean, I always like to be lean, mean, fucking machine kind of guy, but it doesn't work out like that all the time, you know?
I'm allowed to want that, I think, and it probably will happen if I put you at ease. If I'm going to bed with anybody, I mean, we were talking before about what can people do, what can we do? We can't just leave it to the support services. There's something we can all do. We can be kinder on Grindr. We can be kinder to that Asian guy who we might not fancy. For whatever complicated reasons we don't fancy them. There's ways to be kinder to this person, this human. There's activism that we can do in bed too. Like, I am absolutely never, I make a commitment to you and to everyone on my Grindr and in the world. I promise I will never perform sex again just to please you. You deserve better than that from me. Even if I'm a fumbling, farty, unattractive mess in bed, I will be that before I will perform fabulous sex for you again, because you deserve more from me than another silly performance. There's plenty of them online. If you want a performance without heart, go and get it. This, I promise, I commit that my sex will always be authentic. My vulnerability will be there because I can't live without it. If you can't find that sexy, we're not right for each other. Cool, I will keep finding and looking for the person that does find that sexy.
Yeah.
I'm going to provide a space in my bed where you never have to perform. If you ever feel like you need to perform, like you're going to disappoint me, like you're going to let me down, like I'm going to find you unsexy all of a sudden because of something you did or something you did, I promise that won't happen in this bedroom. I promise I give you the space to be human and complicated and vulnerable and messy and all these kinds of things. And in any moment, if you feel like you're performing, please stop and just say, David, I'm doing this. I'm performing again. I promise I'll be there and I'll stay with you. I won't reach for my Grindr. I won't show disappointment on my face. That's what I like about sex. And that's what my community needs from me. That's what I need from my community. And this is what I've actually been looking for all the time.
Yeah, but that's, you feel comfortable with who you are, David, for the most part, right?
Not at all, but
Okay,
I can say
but
these things
yeah, okay.
confidently. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I remember there was a time in my life when I found out about my HIV status that I would be grateful for having somebody just accept me to have sex, to have a date.
Mm.
Right? That I thought I was damaged goods. That, you know, the fact that you're willing to be with me, I was like, oh, great, finally, yeah. And I think today, um, people are put themselves at risk because of the fact that they just feel like they're accepted for the, not for who they are, just for the sex. And yeah, so, you know, are people really looking for that? I think a lot of people involved in Grindr and Chemsex, they're not. I don't think many really want an emotional kind of connection. Or am I wrong?
I don't know, but I think that most people don't know what they want. I think that it starts with going, when I'm horny and I'm about to hook up again, I'm looking for my phone. When I'm about to, what do I really want? Because sometimes we're lonely and starved of intimacy, and we think the best way to fix that is through sex.
Yeah.
But they think the thought that comes to my head is I'm horny. You know, horny is a part of it, but it's almost, sometimes we are just horny. Sometimes sometimes we need company. Sometimes we need affirmation. Maybe we all, one of the primal things we need is we need to be affirmed as sexy beings. We need someone to say you are sexy. Partly because culturally we live in gay men live in a culture where sexy is at the top of the hierarchy pyramid.
Yeah.
And if you're not sexy, you're less than. We've just created this world. I mean, it's bigger than gay life. You know, Insta world is like this too, but especially in gay life, if you are sexy, you will be successful. If you are sexy, you will be on the guest list. If you are sexy, you'll have lots of friends. If you are sexy, you'll dance on the dance floor. You'll definitely find someone to snog and go home with tonight.
Yeah.
If you are sexy, you'll be in bed with someone and feel good about it, and you won't hate your body. If you are sexy, everything will work out. If you're sexy, you'll find friends. If you're sexy, you won't be lonely. If you're sexy, you'll find love. If you're sexy, everything will work out. And we live in a culture where sexiness is prioritized, and if you're less than, and most people feel less than that. So, I mean, it starts with figuring out, what do I want from sex? Is it for someone to say, you are sexy, you are, and to make you feel it? Because that's okay. It's okay to want that. It's human. It's very, it's not want to say masculine. It's part of the male experience to want to be told you are sexy. And we don't need to be ashamed of wanting that or going out and looking for it. But let's call everything what it is. If you just want to do drugs and just want to get high, call it that. It might not be, you say I'm horny, but actually you just want to be high. Maybe it's I want affirmation, I want to be. Maybe it's I want love because I'm lonely and I want to be, but I'm horny. So this I'm horny, where's my grinder? I think that dialogue we need to have in our communities and in our friendships is, what do we really mean when we say I'm horny? What do we really mean? And what do we really want? And then when you know what it is, find out how to go and make it happen.
Yeah.
How to tell somebody this is what I really want from this experience, and hope that that person doesn't say, well, fuck off, I just wanted a shag. And then you reject it again and back in the cycle.
Yeah. And then lowering the expectations around performance and body shame.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a funny thing because I'm fit and I'm fine. There's nothing wrong with my body, although loads of gays have told me there is. No, I'm being facetious. If I'm sober, okay, there happens to be a mirror right there, okay? So if I'm sober and I'm looking in the mirror naked, and I'm going to sit in front of the mirror naked, maybe even try and have a wank and get off on myself, which is a right I should be able to enjoy. I absolutely can't. I hate my body so much, and I'm certainly not going to get off in it. And if I try and sit naked in front of the mirror, my whole body just squirms with criticisms. Now, interestingly, if I do meth, if I do Tina, smoke some Tina, and then turn, you know, I'm so sexy, and I want to try different costumes on. I want to tie my balls up with some leather straps or a cock ring, and I want to put some different sexy shorts on, pose, and I can work, and I can really get off on my body. And everyone who's done Tina gets this. It's what bonds us in a big way in regard to chemsex is we like our bodies and our sexiness when we're high. Now, I've heard that meth is so incredibly intoxicating, and overpowering. It causes great psychosis and things. Is this reflection I'm seeing, is that just a hallucination? Is this drug so powerful that it's tricking my eyes and causing an hallucination, making that reflection attractive? Is that one option because it's an option? Or is it that I've spent decades of my life being rejected on Grindr, criticizing myself whenever I saw other gay men on covers of magazines, criticizing myself, being criticized by other gay men that I've hooked up with who wanted something better than me, insta rejections and insta competitiveness? Have I internalized so much of this self-hatred that all I can see when I look in the mirror is my faults, when actually I'm gorgeous, and we all are, but we just can't see it because of the sexy hierarchy culture, rejection culture that we kind of live in, and it's bigger than that, and body shaming and internalized. So is it any wonder that we just want to look in the mirror and see sexy, and there's a drug that does it for us, and suddenly all of our dreams can come true on these drugs?
No, but I think what's also important, and what we've seen, is that people really need to be informed about Tina and about these things, because if there isn't enough information available before that, people don't really know what they're going into.
Right. We do need to, there is, I think that chems, particularly crystal meth and G, and methadone, kind of came in a pretty package at the tail end of the ecstasy epidemic.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we had adopted, we gays, we didn't use heroin and crack cocaine as much as other populations did. We loved our party drugs. We wanted our drugs for something different. We wanted to party. We wanted to take our shirt off. We wanted to dance. We wanted to connect as a community. We wanted to celebrate through an AIDS epidemic. We wanted to dance, and we wanted to connect. We wanted to feel sexy and chat and socialize and connect. That's not what heroin does. You know, we were looking for something else. And that was very low problematic. You know, we had these gorgeous decades of dance where there was hardly any hospitalizations, hardly any emergency visits to accident emergency because of these drugs, hardly any addiction issues because of these drugs. It was what we had, this heyday of gorgeous drugs and dance and happiness and joy in the middle of all of this AIDS stuff. And right at the tail end of that, this stork came delivering a new baby, and the new baby was chems, wrapped in this gorgeous shiny package that were even better than the ecstasy and really good for sex, and we love sex. And they were really, really good, and they felt amazing, and they was available much more easier than the ecstasy was. When you went to have ecstasy, you'd have to find a dealer somewhere, by friends, through friends, through friends. Suddenly these chems are available on Grindr, and it's like, how amazing. And we just adopted them as party drugs. But as you say, I wish that delivery, the package, the pretty package, had much more stern warnings on saying, cautious though, because these drugs are not ecstasy. These drugs, you need a greater skill set to manage safely. Yeah. These drugs can cause harm, big ones. You need to know a whole lot of information to avoid dying and experiencing some bad consequences on this. So the package is coming wrapped in all of this harm reduction information, but we didn't. We just adopted it and used it, and we've got a chemsex epidemic, which looks like everyone's having fun, but on the Mondays and Tuesdays, our services are flocked with people who are really struggling with the consequences.
Yeah, and I think there's a great part of doing chems and having sex and having a great time. But we've also seen a friend of mine who organized Chemsex Dialogue here in the Netherlands, a series of performances. He told me that after doing all this, he realizes that, you know, without informing people, it's been a game changer for a lot of people he met, that they wound up being in situations where they were very vulnerable, where they were at risk, where they, you know, it was like there was no forewarning. Listen, if you're going to do this, you can have a great time, but there you could wind up in a situation where you could be raped, you could be abused, you could be taken advantage of. And how do we deal with this? How do we, you know, it's about getting back to becoming a responsible drug user, right?
Yeah.
So
the metaphor I prefer, I mean, you know, I've been involved, as you know, in sort of helping many cities set up chemsex support services,
Yeah.
and my guiding principle is has to be, they're no good setting up a service unless people are going to come to them. And people are not going to, we don't want a service that just deals, that has to clean up the mess. We want these places to be, if you're going to go skydiving and jumping out of planes with a parachute, you're going to get training first. You're not going to just do it. You're going to learn how to do it because it can go wrong.
Exactly.
Chemsex is exactly the same. It's not just like popping an ecstasy pill. You need a little bit of training. You need a little bit of learning how to do this. And all the chemsex support services are not places that you go after everything's gone wrong.
No.
They're not places that you go as a failure because I can't handle my drugs and now that everything's gone wrong, I go to the chemsex support services. That's, yes, the chemsex support services are there for that. They're very good at that. But what they're even better at is being welcoming places where you can pop along when there's nothing wrong at all and just say, I'm going to be doing chems and I want to make sure I'm doing everything right. Have you got any tips? And can I help set some boundaries with you? Yeah. And what they'll talk to you about is, do you want to use, how often do you want to use? Do you want this to happen every weekend? Do you want it to happen just once a month? Do you want it to happen on bank holidays? What are the consequences like for you? Do you get the psychosis often? Because I'll give you some information about why that's happening and how to prevent that from becoming an actual constant mental health issue. You know, all this kind of stuff. Great, brilliant conversations that we should be having.
Yeah, like in the early days of harm reduction is substance use management. Right, all basic stuff, substance use management, overdose prevention, how do you take care of yourself. Back in the early days of the needle syringe program, teaching people how to inject safely, all these things we could apply to chemsex.
And it's getting that message out to our gay communities, because I think you and I know that, and probably everyone tuned in knows that. I will hope to hear from everybody in a minute.
We had about 21 people tonight.
Well, we need to hear from them, I guess. I can see some comments coming up. But what we do need to do is get the message out to the guys who are using chems that don't wait for things to go wrong to engage in a chemsex support service. Please don't. Engage beforehand, because these drugs are complicated. And every chemsex support service I know, I mean every single chemsex support service I know in the world, wants you to come and have that conversation about boundaries, how to fit them into your life in a way that suits you, that can avoid harm happening. And even if it's like a matter of setting, I've got this boundary, I will use that drug, but I won't use that one. I will smoke, but I won't inject, or I will do this, or I will do that, and I'll only do it this often, and I want 40% of my sex to be sober as well. And I want to achieve my other life goals and be excited about them. And so when you start crossing boundaries and realize, I don't care about my life goals anymore, I don't want to go to that barbecue, I just want to do chemsex, or I'm using more frequently than ever, or I haven't had sober sex I can't remember, and I want to keep that boundary safe, then that's what your drugs worker can help you to maintain.
Yeah, and I think that's important. So listen, before we go, we had a few comments here, some questions. Shall we sort that out?
Yes, go.
Okay, so well, somebody was talking about body shame and the standards of performance are high, that the laws of our biology are surpassed. So validation and loneliness are all seen as weaknesses sometimes. That's one issue. The other issue is about 3-MMC, which is becoming increasingly popular. Do you see that in London as well?
We do. Yes, it's here. We call it mephedrone, even though it's 3-MMC they're talking about. It's been quiet lately. Like we've seen a lull in this in the last year. It's mainly crystal meth and G. But yeah, my perception of that drug is that people perceive it to be not really as dangerous as the other ones. But in regard to drug-induced psychosis, that awful paranoia that happens if you miss a night's sleep, 3-MMC, mephedrone, is almost as equally capable of causing that, and a whole lot of people struggle with that too.
As G.
As crystal meth.
Oh, okay.
So crystal meth and mephedrone, 3-MMC, both have the ability to sort of keep you going for a long time, but to cause that drug-induced psychosis that can happen on the second or third day of not sleeping. G doesn't really do that. That's crystal meth and mephedrone, 3-MMC. So we need to sort of help deliver those messages too. I'm kind of 3-MMC is a little less dangerous than crystal meth, but it does have this. It's got that pretty package that it's not like other chems. It's safe to use. For instance, if you're at a barbecue on a Sunday with your friends, it might be socially acceptable to do some 3-MMC, but no one would ever bring their crystal meth pipe out. You know, one is more stigmatized and the other one is not. But actually, the harms and dangers are very similar.
Okay. And have you noticed the difficulties of people who are doing TINA and differentiating symptoms of COVID?
Yeah, I'm trying to read this one. It's from Anonymous.
Yeah, you saw that?
Yeah, I'll read it. So friends and colleagues have been noticing a curious lack of folk who use TINA who also present with severe cases of COVID. I'm pretty sure that I had it in February, but the tests weren't available for me to be sure. Have other medical and public health workers and the community of users also noticed this? I count 2 people I know who had been hospitalized. I don't know about any of this, to be honest. I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
I know that there is a lot of people who are catching COVID who use TINA and chems. I didn't notice any people who had more severe cases of it. I don't know. I can imagine that if someone was a regular smoker, that would absolutely have an effect on the respiratory system, and so that would make COVID worse.
Yeah. And of course, you know, you're not sleeping, eating, or taking care of yourself. You subject yourself to being more open to that.
Yeah.
And I think the other one here is for a peer counselor.
Oh, he says, this is Ben. He says, advice for a peer counselor on helping or encouraging someone on recovery, or about avoiding getting sucked in emotionally or relapse. Okay, well, that's I need an hour to answer that one, but it's probably my favorite question. As a peer counselor, the best thing you can do is just sort of say, would you, rather than sort of fixing all of your addiction problems or labeling it as addiction or a problem, rather than thinking about how do you want chems to fit into the rest of your life, or understanding your relationship to chems, forget all that. Forget it all. What we can start with is, do you want to have a break for a weekend or a month? Up to you. And let's just keep it as simple as that. And what you watch people who are sort of a little frightened because the most typical early signs of a chem problem are it happening more frequently than they want to. So it's somebody saying, I'm doing it every weekend and I didn't plan to last weekend, but I did do it again. And I plan not to do it next weekend, but I probably will. Is there something wrong with me? Do I have a problem? Like, shh, let's not talk about it. Let's just, do you want to have a break for 1 week? Yeah. Okay, let's see if we can do it. Exactly. Okay, keep it that simple.
Yeah.
And then it's just about managing cravings when they happen, and being very committed. So saying out loud, I commit to that. It's important to me. So I would ask someone to tell me again and again, why do you want to do this? Why is it important to you? Because I really need a break, and because of this reason, okay, I'm going to reflect that back to you. It's really important to you to achieve these things, and you're committed to not using for a week. So I would check in with me 2 or 3 times a week just to remind me why it's important to you. Because if you start forgetting why it's important to you, your cravings will overcome. And I'll teach you some craving management techniques as well.
Yeah. And what we've seen is that it's really, some people have found it difficult because managing their use is more difficult because now there's not much to do and keep your mind off things and keep busy if you're home isolating.
Right, yeah.
It's becoming difficult, more and more difficult for people. So is there anything that you would suggest or recommend?
No, it's the same principles really, regardless of every single person that is struggling with addiction or drug use or alcohol use or chems, every single person will list a whole lot of reasons why it's hard for them.
Yeah.
The drug worker's job is to go, yes, absolutely. I don't really care. I do care, but I don't care what the reason is. You could be in a room full of 12 meth users who are pushing you to use. It doesn't matter. It comes down to your choice. Do I or don't I? Or you could be alone at home, or you could be in a nightclub, or you could be struggling with abuse issues, or sexually assaulted last week and you're struggling with that. Everyone's got their reason. Everyone's got the backstory, the background issues, the underlying reasons to use. And they're all important. We'll deal with them later in therapy, but all that matters today is you will have to make a decision today or in the next few days about whether to use or not. And what happens when you're making that decision. All the other stuff doesn't matter. Is it important to you? Tell me why, and how can you stick to that commitment and choose to not use?
Yeah, well, it's also about taking a break and taking care of yourself. It's like it's a take care of Jason day today. And today, Jason's going to chill, have something nice to eat, make a nice meal.
Zoom with David.
Right. Nice. Yeah. Hang out with David, put on some nice clothes, chill out. And so sometimes we just need to push ourselves a little bit. Even if you're not leaving the house, put on a nice outfit, walk around the house, make yourself look sexy.
Yeah. Or not sexy. I mean, we're not
sexy, right.
You can. I mean, that's a great thing. But sometimes it's about investing in non-sexiness too, because sometimes that can become an obsession.
That's very important, David. Investing in non-sexiness. That's okay. It's okay not to be sexy.
To be able to really, really want to see your authentic, non-sexy friends and get a compliment, and that's just as valuable to you as getting the sexy compliment or being in a sexy environment or being perceived as sexy. That's a really important part of chemsex therapy, is really investing in the non-sexy side of you too, and being interested in non-sexy things and non-sexy compliments and non-sexy affirmations. Not to deny the sexiness, it's a valid thing.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's about, we can lose focus of anything that's not delivering those sexy affirmations. There's a really good question here from James, who says, in terms of recovery from TENA psychosis, how many years can that last till the brain is fully healed, if ever? It's a hard one, but it's absolutely diverse for everybody. So if someone has pre-existing mental health that they've never seen, so that could be any of us, we could all have these tiny rumblings under the surface of mental health that never comes to the surface, we never even know. But one single meth psychosis episode can trigger it. And so one single 3-day weekend of meth psychosis, and you can find that you are then insecure, paranoid, self-conscious, almost constantly from then onwards. It can trigger a kind of latent, constant mental health. But that's not too common. What we see most commonly is meth psychosis once, twice, 8 times. And it always lasts for 2 or 3 or 4 days afterwards. Diminishes slowly over time, but once in a while you see someone where it lasts for a few weeks. And what we do is go to say, you're probably doing TENA for a little bit too long. What you really need to do is have a break from TENA. I'm going to see you every single week just to see if your symptoms are diminishing a bit, because sometimes it can take 2 or 3 months of non-TENA use for those symptoms to go away, and then you're fine. But in some cases, especially if you do lapse again or use again and trigger another psychotic episode, it can become a permanent state. So it's about a very constant assessment with a good healthcare professional if it's happening to you. But the sad news is that if a person experiences meth psychosis too frequently, regardless of any pre-existing mental health issues, if you experience it every time you do it, but you keep on doing it, hoping that this time will be different, you are really risking very dangerous permanent mental health.
Yeah. Are there anything that you would recommend to help speed up recovery? Because I remember after a night of doing ecstasy, cheeseburger, orange juice, things like that, it would always kind of help you ground you, No,
listen, the body knows what it needs after a peanut bender, and everybody on here knows what you need. Your body just says, fucking sleep. And then you're fucking hungry and you just eat. Your body knows what it needs. It's urgent sleep, urgent rest, urgent food. There's nothing you can do, when you really pummel your body that hard.
Yeah.
It really is just recovery, and your body will do it by itself. When it comes to mental health, there's not much you can do except really, if it's starting to become a regular thing, meth psychosis, really take a break earnestly before it becomes something. And there is, if you go to my website, davidstewart.org, you will find a meth psychosis handbook, and it's really layman's terms, how to manage your own psychosis, how to prevent it if possible, but also how to speak to people that are experiencing it while they're with you and how to help them.
Well, that's fantastic. And maybe we could follow up on that discussion we had a while ago about doing a video about that.
Yeah, we did talk about that, didn't we? We have so many projects we never finished, Jason.
No, we haven't, but we have time now.
Yeah, we do.
We have time, but we'll try to figure it out. But this has been wonderful, David. I really appreciate taking the time. It's great to see you.
I want to say hi to all my friends. As Felix is here, and I can see that Alex and Daniel from Sydney's are all here. Hans is local to you, I think. But it's really nice for everyone tuning in. Thank you. I can't see people's faces. I can just see the comments.
Well, we've had about 21 people. We have about 16 at the moment. So that's really fantastic. It was great to have an intimate, nice discussion with you.
Nice to see you.
And I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Thanks for having me. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Have a great night.
Okay, bye.
Take care of yourself.